Hi, my name is Nicholas Stone, and I'm a student in the University of Arkansas Medical School College of Public Health. And the following video is my final presentation for environmental and occupational health and represents a hypothetical scenario. The following video does not reflect the views of UAMS or any other agent. Hello, my name is Nicholas Stone, and I'm an occupational health consultant. In this presentation, I will be covering biological hazards in the occupational setting for construction workers, gardeners, and farmers. I will specifically be covering biohazards that are not bloodborne pathogens. So by the end of this presentation, I hope that you have a deeper understanding of what occupational biohazards may be and how to protect yourselves against them. In any of the three occupations I mentioned, there's a risk for contact with potential biohazards. So my objective with this presentation is to cover what are biohazards and how do we recognize a source of a biohazard, how do we protect against potential biohazards, and then what you should do in case of exposure to a biohazard. So all of these objectives are important in helping to reduce any potential harm that may be caused on a job site or on the farm from any biohazards you may come in contact with. Biological hazards or biohazards can be any substance that potentially poses a threat to our health. Biohazards can be microorganisms, viruses, or toxins. Microorganisms would include bacteria, fungi, and parasites. Some examples of these are the bacterium Clostridium tetani, commonly known as tetanus, different types of mold, which is a fungus, and the parasite Toxoplasmosis. Examples of viruses could be West Nile virus or the Zika virus. Then toxins are poisonous substances made by living organisms, and a common toxin that could potentially affect gardeners, farmers, and construction workers is poison ivy. All of these may be too small or blend in too well with their environment for them to be noticed, but we can still take caution by learning where to find these biohazards. So on the next slide, we will discuss carriers and sources of these biohazards and give a few examples. But first, let's discuss why it is important to be able to recognize biohazards. As I mentioned earlier, everything listed on this slide poses a potential threat to our well-being. It's easy to be aware of physical hazards because those can be seen and touched, and you're constantly aware they are there because of that. However, with biohazards, that is not always the case, but they can be just as, if not more dangerous than physical hazards. Therefore, by practicing to recognize these small, inconspicuous hazards can be crucial to your health as gardeners, farmers, and construction workers. So now that we've discussed what they are, let's talk a bit about where we can find biohazards. So sources of biohazards can be from animals, fungus, insects, plants, soil, or water. So animals can be carriers for diseases such as rabies, or they can have toxins in their bites, and their droppings can carry a myriad of bacteria and parasites. So one that I already brought up is toxoplasmosis, which is commonly found in cat feces. And then birds and bats can also carry a fungus called histoplasmosis. It's carried on the feathers of birds and in the droppings of bats, and it can cause breathing issues. And then another common carrier of disease you may come across are rats in their nests. And then insects can also have bites that spread toxins, or they can carry diseases such as ticks that can carry Lyme's disease or Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And then also mosquitoes can carry the viruses we mentioned earlier, West Nile and Zika. And then we have plants that most people are familiar with are poison ivy, poison oak, and poison sumac, all three of which secrete oils that can cause skin irritation. And then other plants can be harmful if they're ingested. And then soil and water, that's where we start to have some crossover between a few of these. So for instance, while histoplasmosis is carried by birds and bats, it thrives in rich soil. And then tetanus can also be found in soil, but it typically only infects the body through a wound. And then water, standing water in particular, can be home to bacteria or parasites, toxoplasmosis, for example, that may have entered the water through cat droppings. And then standing water can also be a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And then warm, damp areas can promote the growth of mold, which is a fungus. Now, how do we protect ourselves from biohazards? So there are a few ways to protect yourself from potential biohazards. The primary goal is to avoid contact with sources of biohazards, so steering clear of wild animals, recognizing plants that may be harmful, and using a DEET-containing bug spray to help prevent insect bites. And then elimination of the source is fundamental to the prevention and control of biohazards. So this may include proper ventilation of an area or improved drainage to decrease the amount of standing water. But however, it's not always possible to avoid a biohazard. And if it can't be avoided, then the next step is to ensure we are wearing the proper gear. So this can include masks or respirators, protective clothing, gloves. For example, when working in an area with a high population of mosquitoes, wearing long pants and long sleeves can help reduce the amount of exposure to bites. Or if entering an area with standing water, wearing rubber boots or waders to keep dry. And then one of the most basic methods to avoid infection is by washing your hands and any other potentially exposed areas before and after work. So in case of exposure, what do you need to do? We already talked a bit about personal hygiene and washing your hands to protect from exposure. And this can also help if you're exposed by thoroughly washing any exposed areas of skin with soap and water. You also want to carefully remove any items of clothing that may have been contaminated, taking efforts to avoid contact with your skin, then placing them in a leak-proof container and properly laundering them. Then, if you know you have been exposed or are unsure, it is good practice to seek medical attention. Preventative medicine can prevent or reduce harm to most exposures. For instance, antibiotics can help prevent Lyme disease if they are started early enough after discovering the tick bite. Or in the case of poison ivy, steroids can reduce the irritation and help stop the spread to other parts of the body. Now let's reflect on everything we've discussed so far. Biohazards can be any biological substance that can cause harm to our health and includes microorganisms, viruses, and toxins. They can be found all around us, carried by animals and insects, forming on the walls of damp areas in the form of mold, in the soil and water, and secreted by plants. The best way to protect ourselves from them is by avoiding them altogether. But if they can't be avoided, then we need to protect ourselves the best way we can by wearing proper protective equipment and then practicing good personal hygiene. If all that fails, the next step should be to remove any potential contamination from ourselves and to seek medical attention where necessary. By remembering these key things, you can better protect yourself on the job. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I hope you come away with a better understanding of biohazards and how to protect yourselves from any you may come across. Feel free to ask any questions you may have, and listed here on the next slide are my references. So if you're interested in reading more on any of the topics we discussed today, I highly encourage you to check them out. Thank you.